Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session of Green Grease webinar series on development of climate resilient road design and maintenance manuals for Papua New Guinea. Thank you for joining today's session. I'm Jinsun Lim, Adaptation Solutions Specialist at the ADB, and I'm your moderator for today's webinar. So following on from the excellent webinar presented by Elga Cox and Travis Waller on the advanced climate and nature hazard risk modeling work they have undertaken across Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Papua New Guinea. Today, we discuss the subsequent work that has occurred in Papua New Guinea on the development of new climate and disaster resilient road design and maintenance manuals. I would like to share some house rules. Your microphone will be muted unless you are invited to speak, and please use the Zoom Q&A functions to submit your questions during the presentation. And we will have some separate moment to answer to these questions. The topic is one that is very familiar to me as I was working on this topic together with the two presentators of today, and we have prepared good manuals on this. As we all know, the increasing impacts of climate and geophysical hazards on road infrastructure pose a significant challenge to roads. To address the challenge and strengthen resilience of roads in the Papua New Guinea, ADB has been closely collaborating with the Department of Works and Highways and other partners in the Papua New Guinea. So I would like to introduce two lead specialists for the manuals we'll be presenting today, and I will introduce them now. Although you might know that Theans and Ian, they have attended a previous Green Rose webinars. So first of all, Associate Professor Dr. Theans Henning is the Director of the Research Platform for Climate Adaptation and a Senior Infrastructure Management Lecturer at the University of Auckland, where he is also Deputy Dean International with the Faculty of Engineering and Design. Theans has been undertaking research projects in the area of infrastructure risk management, climate change, and adaptation responses. And his key areas include investigating the interaction of water and road pavements, identifying drainage needs, and various surfacing technologies for mitigating water impacts. He has led the development of the climate and disaster resilient road design manual part of this work. And also we have another presenter, Dr. Ian Greenwood, who is a highly experienced road asset management consultant with experience spanning 6 different continents, with a particular work focused on integrating climate change and nature hazards into the management and maintenance of road networks. He has co-authored different guidelines on the road hazard risk management and also integrating climate change into the road asset management. He has been working on different projects of the ADB's recent guidelines on the transport projects and GHG emissions. And he has been also working on these projects about the climate and disaster resilience road maintenance manual. So I will now hand it over the floor to Theans and Ian. Floor is yours.
Thanks, Jinsun. And thanks everyone for joining us for hopefully what's another good session. It's a pleasure to once again share the virtual stage with a good colleague and friend, Theans. You can flick on to the next slide if you like there, good sir. So I'm just going to talk through the first little bit of how the two manuals have come together, and more importantly, how they haven't actually been created in isolation from all the other initiatives going on in PNG. Tians will then take us through the road manual, I'll take the design manual, I'll take us through the maintenance manual, and hopefully we'll be all wrapped up with sort of 15 minutes to go for Q&A. So next slide there, please, Tiens. So I guess it's an interesting slide, the picture here, that PNG's road network is, it has at the top end, some very good roads, Port Moresby, and actually up in the Highlands now with the lot of investment over many years, they've actually got some of their network is really, really good. Other parts of their network are incredibly challenged from all the different factors impacting on them. Tiens will go through that a bit more in a while, but we're dealing with a really diverse network here. Next slide. And against that, those challenges, PNG is actually receiving a lot of different support from different key players. And I don't want to make this sound like an exhaustive list. It's not. But these are some of the key initiatives that we've had to design the manuals around or with, I guess is a better term, or leverage off, I guess is actually even better still. So Australia, through the DFAT program, they're up to a TSSP3. That's the third iteration of that project funding stream. That's done a lot of work around all the different parts of asset management, supporting the ministry on a day-to-day basis, or the department, doing road condition assessment surveys, asset management competency assessments, and they've been implementing an asset management information system. They also, around a year ago, I think it was May of last year, released the Climate Change Risk and Vulnerability Assessment Framework, which spans all infrastructure for the government of PNG. Within the ADB, we produced a road asset management roadmap, which brings together all the different initiatives of all the different donors, looking at what needs to be done and who's doing what. I've been leading a lot of the bridge asset management work, and the work you heard Alco and Travis talk about a month ago, I think it was, pre-Easter anyway, around the network level multi-hazard resilient modelling. The World Bank's been doing OPRC contracts, similar ADB has been doing some of those, JICA's doing capacity development, and the government themselves have been doing a lot of work with their Connect PNG program, which is a massive infrastructure program, sort of looking to double the size of the road network over the next 10, 20 years. I've reclassified road networks, had a strategic road network management plan, done the Road Act, done the Road Fund. The important thing I want to get out of this screen is really, we have not tried to create a manual in isolation from all these different things. What we've tried to do is say, these are all the givens. These are the things we know. So if we flick on a slide, please, Tiens. So I guess simply put at the top there, we have all these climate scenarios, flooding maps, earthquake maps, landslide maps. Those are fed into the work of Alco and Travis that you heard about, which is our network criticality studies. In the terms or in the context of the PNG's CCRVA, the Climate Change Risk Vulnerability Assessment Framework, that's effectively the top-down approach, that big picture of using those big studies to tell us what we expect. That data then has been fed into their asset management system to store it. So we're trying to move away from having reports sitting there that are not usable, but that data then also feeds down into the bottom to give us our inputs to our different design and maintenance manuals. Thanks, Tiens. The other thing which has been going on in the background is the encouragement from the IMF to actually get climate resilience right across all the different parts of government and into their daily practices. And this was from the 2025 report. The second point there, given the criticality of routine and capital maintenance of infrastructure assets for effective adaptation strategy, support from the World Bank ADB, the authorities are on track to pilot incorporation of climate considerations and maintenance standards and costings applied to the national roads. So that's very much where we then feed into with these outputs. Thanks, Tiens. I think there's one more and that's back to you. So the team, you're hearing from Tiens and I today, we're just two parts of the team. We're fortunate that at the top, Jinson, who you've heard from, Ono-san in PNG, and Michael, bringing very strong technical leadership to us as well. It's not often you actually have, you're doing a very technical project, but you've actually got people who are technically very well at top of their game also working with you. So Tians has led the road design manual and the overall project manager. I've been doing the deputy project manager, but leading on the maintenance side. And then we've had some other specialists, Heaping on the climate risk aspects, Patrick on geotech, Mananye on hydrology, Jagesh road safety, and our two local consultants, Morgan and Dulama. And I think Tians hadn't been to PNG before this, but had worked in Solomons. And then Mananye is the only one who actually hasn't been to or working in PNG for quite some time. Myself, I've been going backwards and forwards for the past decade or so. So over to you. I think that is Tians.
Thank you very much, Ian. And yes, I can only echo your sentiments around the urgent need for climate resilience in Papua New Guinea, and at the same time also really the good engagement and interaction we had with the government. So I'm going to present now to you the road design manual, and there's perhaps just two comments that I would like to make before we get into the detail. The first comment is we definitely did not attempt to reinvent the wheel. In the past, Papua New Guinea has used the Austroads design guides that they had to their disposal, and we didn't feel any need for reinventing that. So where appropriate, we are still heavily reliant on the Austroads design guides. But obviously, what we tried to do for this project in particular was to contextualize it for Papua New Guinea. And then the second one is a very, very strong focus on climate resilience in all the aspects of the design. So looking at the overview, we have developed it into different parts. At some stage, we did contemplate whether those should be separate manuals, but we have decided to keep them as one unit. And you can see there that we cover most of the aspects related to road design. What I will be going through now is a short introduction into each one of those sections. I'm not going to start presenting all the basics. I guess the purpose more for the presentation today to you is to highlight some of the different thinking and perhaps the focus on climate adaptation and how we brought that into the design manual in itself. So starting off with the introduction, one of the really focus areas for me was to give the designer a strong lead in terms of the decision-making process. We often get the situation that by the time that you get to the designer, many of the decisions of the composition of the actual design, the scope and the boundaries may have been stated. And we often then also get that the designer assumes that is exactly what they have to deliver. But I think what we try to do with this manual is really to stand back, number one, thinking of what are the drivers for this investment. So it could be a strategic development. Typically, your capital development works fall under that category. Whether you're looking at a rehabilitation or a renewal or a safety improvement, so more the technical improvements, or whether you're looking at a resilient improvements. So that's the first point. The second point is also that we hardly ever do a design for, say, one particular area in isolation. We often have to consider more than one of those aspects when we design. So there is quite a bit of guidance around that decision process in the manuals. We've also introduced a second component to the road classification. We have adopted the current road functional specification for Papua New Guinea. and there was no reason to change that. But what we have introduced is a resilient classification that overlays the functional classification. So as you can see in the table, the functional classification is really there to help the designer understand the design standards and also the intended level of service. The resilient classification consists of two components. The first one is the actual risk assessment itself, which Ian has alluded to earlier, the work that Elko Cox and colleagues has done before. So that's the traditional risk assessment, or some countries call it the vulnerability assessment. So from that, you're going to get a risk score. We then also use a criticality rating, and the criticality rating is really there to guide us a little bit in terms of the priority for say, resilience improvements. Give you an example, you may have two roads that has got exactly the same risk or natural hazard risk, but you may have a situation that the one road leads to an hospital and the other road is just a road that leads into, say, an urban residential area. So obviously the road that goes to the hospital would have priority, even though those two roads may have exactly the same risk. Ian, I would like you to just talk us through this slide in terms of the risk assessment itself.
Yeah, so thanks. The CCRVA, the framework that's in place in PNG and which has been adopted by the government, that requires or outlines both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. Now, the concept we've tried to use is to say, well, how do we make good use of the top-down issues or assessments? So where we've got the work, so it says from ALCO, that study, that is essentially our top-down analysis. And what we're saying is in the flowchart, if we work down through it, apologise for the size of the font there, but it says the first question, does the actual top-down assessment indicate there is a high risk? And this was repeated first for flooding, for earthquakes, landslides, or any other risk you wish to put through it. But it's saying, is there a high risk? If there's not, then we can essentially do some basic checks. We can check, the maintenance team. We can check with adjacent landowners, and basically say, is there any reason why we wouldn't believe that top-down assessment as being appropriate for this site we're working on? And if there's not, you can just say that is our assessment. We're working with it. So perhaps a top-down assessment says this piece of road doesn't flood, and you go out on site and go, well, clearly it's not going to flood. It's got good terrain. It's out of the site, out of floodplains. You talk to the locals, they say the water never gets anywhere near it. We just want to be able to say, pick that up and use it. That's your result. You don't need to go through the detailed bottom-up session. By contrast, if that top-down is saying it's a high risk, or when you go out and check, you say, oh, the top-down saying it's no risk, but there's evidence of flooding or there's evidence of landslides, then it pushes you back across and says, do the detailed bottom-up assessment. And then that gives you that detailed assessment or detailed results by the different types of hazards to feed through all these other stages of the process. So that's all I wanted to cover there. Back to you, Tiens.
Thank you very much, Ian. So just in terms of this particular part of the manual, we do cover the exact process of the risk assessment or vulnerability assessment, but often that is done by the experts in that area, but it is still there in the manual for reference. The other area that we brought into this part is, of course, once you know what the risk is, and you then sit back and say, okay, what are we going to do about it? And there is a systematic process to understand the appropriate intervention. So typically with a new design, we're going to try and avoid the risk completely. So we want to build the infrastructure in the first place where it's not going to be exposed to future climate impacts. Then for high criticality roads, we would perhaps look at the more engineering solutions where we start looking at treating it or apply some adaptation designs. And then the lower risk, we can start thinking about what is appropriate and what's affordable. We may do some pre-event adaptation, and hopefully Ian is going to get back to this one in the maintenance component. And we can also look at protecting our assets. There is then the post-event aspects, and there you really got to ask yourself, what are you going to replace it with? And we're all quite familiar with the Build Back Better or Build Back Different concept, where we really think about how can we improve our future design. So yeah, the figure on the right-hand side is giving you a little bit of a idea of the typical decisions that you go through from a resilience perspective, ranging from I'm going to invest to bring my risk down through those categories that I've already discussed. We can also think about insuring or transferring the risk through a financial means by either taking out insurance or self-insurance. And then in some situation, it may be appropriate just to accept the risk and to do very little about it, but I would still encourage you to focus on the routine maintenance in that area. We step on now to part C, which is the geometric design and safety requirements. Now, this part C is really focused heavily on the safety-informed geometric design. The aspects covered includes your alignment, your intersections, pedestrian facilities, and then also your other traffic signs and marking. Another big part in the design consideration for the safety aspects, I'm just going to step back to that slide, is of course the safety ratings. So the likes of IRAP is explained in this guideline again, because there's often a situation where you go retrospectively, you assess your road for safety concerns, and then you improve on that as part of your overall works program. The philosophy that's been used is termed the forgiving roads. So we work from a perspective of we know that things go wrong with drivers. Their road may wander off the road, their vehicle may wander off the road, or there may be some sort of a distraction. So what you want to do is to make sure that not only the road that they're traveling on is a safe infrastructure to use, but there's also the moment that the vehicle is leaving the road profile that you don't have solid objects or maybe holes, or in that case with that photograph we can see a drainage structure that could cause quite a bit of harm to our vehicles going into it. So there's a very strong focus also in geometric design on the safety assessment process. Stepping on to the next section, which is the drainage design. And I think this one in particular is quite an important change, because the traditional drainage design guidelines is mostly based on the historic statistics and storm information. So we really went beyond that, starting to look into the future typically. So the concept that we use is the climate risk level and which sort of return period we have to really allow for in our design. So for our critical highways and emergency routes, we definitely look at a 1 and 2 year event. And then also the indicative design life we accept to be between 50 to 100 years. So there's also in this consideration a little bit of a time dimension where you've got to think not only what the situation is today, but with the different climate scenarios, what may be the hazard exposure in the future. Stepping onto earthworks and slope stability. And I believe for this section, we have largely used some of the material that comes out of Queensland in Australia. They have got very strong guidance in first of all, the design aspects and things to consider, retrofitting some of your and stabilizing some of your slopes, and then also the typical inspections and surveys that's required to do your slopes. This is for me quite an important section. I have done quite a bit of work in understanding damages due to storm events, and in often cases with roads in a hilly type terrain, you're going to get up to 60-70% of your road closures will be happening due to slips and rockfalls. Stepping onto the pavement design and life cycle management, there is quite a strong focus on making the right choices of our materials and technology for different approaches, different situations in PNG. There's quite a varying geology, and of course there's a difference in the climatic situation between the mountainous area and some of the low-lying swampy areas. So we've given quite a strong guidelines in terms of the technologies to use for varying traffic volumes, but also in the situation for climate resilience, the different surfacing type options that fits best for a given situation. So it's not only how to design, but really the first step is what is the most appropriate to use in a situation. We also cover the pavement design and life cycle management with really a number of questions in terms of practicalities of the design, looking at your long-term economics, carbon reduction for both the construction, but then also in the life, and then the community development as part of your sustainability thinking into the future. Thank you, Ian. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Tiens. I'll share my screen here and we should be able to somewhat seamlessly continue. How about that? Hopefully that's working. Okay, so now going to move on to the road maintenance manual portion. So the current maintenance practices that we were working with was that PNG still has and will continue to have a maintenance manual that focuses, one too many S in there somewhere, on how to do repairs and with what materials. So sort of that materials and method type specifications. But what they don't have is a specification that says when should you intervene and how should that change depending on the risks. So if I'm dealing in an area where there's known flooding and erosion issues, what standard should I keep the drainage to? Conversely, if I'm in an area that has very little rainfall, no risk of flooding, can I get away with having my drainage maybe a little more blocked? Save some money. It's all very well to say we want to make everything perfect. There's a Australian lady, Penny Burns. She has a saying, and I'll probably misquote her slightly here, but that she said, an over-maintained asset does the same job as an appropriately maintained one, just costs you more. So what we've tried to do with the manual is actually look and say, what is the right standard for the different risks? PNG have also, over the years, they've done a number of performance-based contracts via the ADB, World Bank and others. And they do have a challenge with routing maintenance funding. It's significantly below the current needs for the network size. I don't think that's uncommon to probably many countries around the world, especially those who are trying to develop their network even further. So again, it's no use us saying this is a gold-plated standard for maintaining a small part of the network, but then the rest of it's going to be worse off. So we've tried to deal with those issues as well. So the form of the new maintenance manual that we've looked at, as I said, we're not looking to revoke the existing manuals that tell you how to do things and with what. What we've looked at more is what is an appropriate level of defect for the different risk categories. As Tian said, we've moved beyond just saying this is a national highway or this is a district road or provincial highway. What we've said is if this section of road has a high risk rating for landslides, then this is how we should manage the earthworks in that area. Conversely, if it's a low risk for flooding, then we can manage the flooding differently. So we've tried to break it down by the sort of work you're doing. That whole approach leads us very much into a performance-based specification type maintenance manual. So the maintenance manual we've got very much aligns with that performance-based approach. There's also an aspect to using performance-based specifications, which go into performance-based contracting, that it's actually a known way to improve the performance of public sector entities all over the world. So moving from input or outbase-based contracts all the way through to performance-based contracting is a really good way to drive and improve performance. And that's partly because it forces, in this case, DOWH and the government of PNG to think, what do I actually want to pay for? Rather than just doing work and saying, I'll spend money until it's gone, actually having that rigorous debate of, I've got this much money, where do I spend it? Where do I do the best with the funds I've got? Whether it's enough funds or not, we should still be trying to get the best value out of them. Aligned to that, and this is a slide that actually came from a former manager of mine, Tony Porter. What we're also trying to do is get that linkage between community outcomes at the top, which generally are, we all want to be connected and safe and happy and healthy and vibrant communities. What do we need from them in terms of our assets? So what do we want from our roads? Through the service levels and interventions, and on down to the physical work that occurs at the bottom. And in a perfect world, that all aligns and is integrated. Now, it's very hard to say, I filled a pothole, therefore the community's happy, but we're dealing in that middle ground with these specs. Now, the challenge we have had is we've had to deal with the manuals, both the design and the maintenance, in a relatively confined time frame. And we haven't had a lot of time to go back and say, have we set the standards right? So there's still more work to be done to say, have we set our intervention levels at the right level? And does that overall lead to us having the right service outcomes on those roads? The manual itself, it does assume you've already classified the road as per the road design manual. So that's sort of the given. We haven't repeated that. We've said these two documents share a very common structure. Those who can recall what Tian said about the structure of the design manual find this one is somewhat similar to it. It's largely aligned with the World Bank OPBRC approach. So again, those who are familiar with that will see terminology consistent. And we've tried to keep it quite simplified. So rather than having 1,000 performance metrics and everything else, we've tried to keep a focus on a few that we actually think will drive the right outcomes from a resilience point of view and a climate change point of view. The major, I guess, features you'll see, first of all, it's the frequency of actually going to look at the road. It doesn't matter what specifications or manuals you have, if you don't look, you're never going to see there's a problem. And as Tian said, if the road is critical to you, if it's going to a hospital, if it's going to your power supply, your water supply, you need to make sure you're looking at it frequently enough that you know what's going on. If it's a little, back road leading into a forestry where nobody's really going, or maybe only traveling very seldom, you don't have to look at it every day. If something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. And then we look at our maintenance standards. As I said, they're varying based on the criticality rating of the road, but also varied based on the resilience rating for the given hazard type that's relevant to that standard. And we've suggested that all the high critical routes should have pre-planned detour options to them. So one thing we know in the midst of a disaster, whether that's an earthquake, whether it's major flooding events, that's not the time to make your plans. That's the time to put your plans in place. So what we're saying is, as part of the maintenance manual, we would like to see that DOWH have all these different plans in place. So when something happens, the consultants, the contractors, whoever's on site, they say, this has happened, this is how we do this. This is where we put the signs. This is where the detours are. This is who we tell. And when do we take action? As I said, the inspection frequency. So if it's a low criticality road, we're saying once per month. Medium, every 2 weeks. High criticality, we'd like to see it inspected every week. These are formal inspections by the self-control unit, for those who are familiar with the terms, going out and actually saying, are we complying? Do we have an issue? Additionally, the contractor will want to be out there more often, maybe doing daily patrols or otherwise to make sure they comply. But this is our informed inspections to make sure we're compliant with the specs. The maintenance specs themselves, maintenance standards, they vary. So here, if we're talking about drainage, let me just get my little mouse pointer up. So we're talking about drainage measures. So this comes back to what is the flooding resilience. So how blocked or how many blockages they can be is now related to what is the flooding resilience classification for that piece of road. It's no longer saying, just because I'm a national highway, I have to have it perfect. It's saying, if it's an area that's going to flood, yes, I want it essentially perfect. But if it's not subject to flooding, I can actually accept quite a few smallish, still not overly blocked, but I can accept a number of them. And this same philosophy applies across landslides, where we go back and we say, what's the risk of landslides? That determines our maintenance standards for them. Earthquakes, you name it. There are some that just relate back to the criticality of the road overall. So there are some that still are similar to what you would have experienced, but where there is a clear linkage between a risk or climate or geohazard, geophysical risks, and what we'd expect in the network, we've put that directly in. Some practical guidance on application, looking forward, recognising where we are at timing. As with the design manual, the maintenance manual still needs wider consultation. We've had some, but there's still more to be going on. And we need to pilot test that, the maintenance manual. The ADB, I believe, proposing to pilot the maintenance manual in July in a performance-based project in the Highlands. So that's a great first initiative for us to look and say, have we got those standards right? Is there more clarity needed? Should we tighten them up? Maybe there are some extra measures we need to bring through. But trying to, work this through step by step. There's also some questions we've got for ourselves and for the industry. So around road safety, as Jen said, it's for giving roads, and that's built into the design manual. On the maintenance manual, we also have the requirement to do these road safety audits, so daytime, nighttime, of the existing road to make sure it's being kept safe, not just built safe, but maintained safely. We are also aware there's very few qualified road safety auditors in PNG. So there's no point us saying that something has to be done so frequent if we know there's no one around to do it. So we want to, I guess, stretch industry. We don't want to break industry. And so we're trying to look at whether or not we've got that right, and even how we specify what the qualifications should be of the people doing that. As I said, the form of this maintenance manual very much leads itself into a performance-based maintenance contract, or the output performance-based contract style. There's still the need for all the other documents around that, whether it's your safeguards, whether it's your contract document itself. So this is what we've written, and when you pick it up, it is not a contract document. It's one part of a contract document. And we want to actually get to the point where incorporating climate and disaster resilience in maintenance is business as usual to everyone. It shouldn't just be in these performance-based contracts. but we want to ultimately see it come back right the way through the business. We also need to recognise, and as I said earlier, there are the challenges of funding, and that's universal. I think I'm not sure of any country I've ever been to who they've said, "Hey, we've got too much money, we just don't know what to do with it." So the challenges in PNG are the same. They're not just technical. We're still working out some of those questions for PNG. How do we get the private sector to invest in maintenance? There's a phenomenally big pipeline of work coming through for construction through the Connect PNG program and the work of the ADB, World Bank and others. What are the impediments to actually getting contractors interested in building a strong maintenance capacity alongside the construction capacity? And what's a reasonable timeline to get a competent maintenance industry with the appropriate capacity in PNG? And what are those steps to get there? So these are some of the bits that we're looking at now with the PNG to say, so what? We've got a manual, we've got a design manual, we've got a maintenance manual. What do we then do with it? How do you actually build it? I think we all agree, and this has not required any selling at all in PNG. They fully understand that the savings on maintenance is not a saving, never is. They've got challenges in being able to fully afford it, but that's different to them not recognising that as a way forward. So summary, key points, we've got these new draft manuals in place. They incorporate from the ground up those key principles of climate and geophysical hazard resilience. So it's not an add-on, but actually designed around it. We've designed them and developed them to align with all those other initiatives that are going on. So we've looked at the data and the asset management system and how that flows backwards and forwards. There's still further work to actually elaborate, develop those with the PNG, with the government departments, with industry, and there will be capacity development required. And that's for everyone. That's with the department, that's with consultants, that's with contractors, because if we're going to be successful, and I should add in there with the development partners, ADB, World Bank, JICA, Aussie, it's got to be a PNG incorporated approach. It can't just be somebody's produced the manual. So when we've been having these workshops, we've tried to bring across all those different key partners. So hopefully with that, we get to the point where we've got some resilient infrastructure ahead. I will stop sharing there and pass back to Jinsun to take us through the next part.
Thank you very much, Thea and Ian, for the insightful presentation, providing all the overall structure and key findings of the two road design and maintenance manuals. The drafts are ready with timely guidance responding to the increasing demand for climate and disaster resilient road infrastructure. But I would like to mention that we are still on the journey to finalize it, get it endorsed, and make it implemented. Therefore, your comments, suggestions, or any questions would be very helpful to make these manuals further developed and complete. So I would like to open the floor for the Q&A. We have already received a few questions, and some are already answered by Tayansi and Ian through the Q&A function. But I would like to mention some of the remaining questions. So the first question is about how to estimate the score for each combine the score for the different climate hazards for each classified road. So, for example, on your rainfall, geology, topography, traffic populations, and how they are combined into the road classification. And many years ago, PNG was divided into RMU, resource mapping units. These were very extremely useful for road appraisal. The question from Jack. So maybe Ian, do you want to mention about the road classification used in the manual?
Yeah, so I won't go into all the finer details of the maths, but what we've got, we've had the top-down modelling that, as I said, Alco and Travis have done for us, and that gives us takes on board the geology, the topography, and the traffic modeling. So when they're doing that work, they do the large-scale traffic model. It applies, the hazard and calculates detour routes, calculates the damage to the asset and everything else. So we looked at those. I think there's 7 or 8 different climate projections in terms of rainfall data. So that all of that comes through, and we've looked at return periods. I think up to 1,500-year return period. I think it is. I might be not quite right there, but it's quite a range of things we've looked at. All of those come through to tell us what is the expected impact or damage on or the risks on a section of road. And then so that's sort of the one part of the equation. Then the other part is looking at the criticality rating. So we've got scores for different factors. What's the size of the delay, the detour route? If you lose a piece of road, but the next road is only a few hundred meters away, it's not so bad. If you have to detour for a day, or there's no detour route, then of course it's much worse. And of course, as Tian said, it depends what's down that route. Those who know the PNG network will know that it's actually a fragmented network at the moment. You can't drive from one part of the country to the next, and a lot of the network doesn't have alternatives. That's part of the driver for the Connect PNG road that they're working on, is to try and make it more connected. So that's that part. The resource mapping units, I wasn't aware of that, but thanks for that. We'll have a good look at those.
Thank you very much, Ian, for your response. Actually, there is a kind of follow-up question from the Satyendra. So her question is that how can we apply this to the roads that may be cut through the different climatic zone, maybe different type of climate risk rating? So how can we respond to
So the concept is that a road, will by default have many different ratings along it. And the manual does actually talk about that. So, if I'm designing a road that's 10 kilometres long or even a kilometre long, seldom does the whole kilometre flood, or seldom does a whole kilometre have the same risk of landslides or otherwise. So what we're trying to identify is, if there's a 200-metre sections at risk of flooding, that's where it applies to. Now, from a maintenance point of view, it becomes somewhat messy if every 200 meters or every 50 meters it's got a different maintenance standard. So we do average it, a little bit across. But yes, the idea is that the design should reflect what's applicable at that same point.
Thank you very much, Ian, for the response. Now I'm handing over a question to Theans. So there are actually 2 questions related to geotech stability issues. So first question is from Indra. So we can understand issues with the rural roads that having been a similar geography to Nepal, where the landslides and slips on every road. Does PNG adopt as for roads design for pavement design in urban area? Would think the presentation limits to the rural roads in terms of that. And also there is another question from Peter about the geotech stability, considering like design variance in terms of overslip, underslip. So overslip is relatively straightforward, but underslip can result in loss of access availability for extended time. So I want to request Theans, your point of view about this kind of geotech stability considerations about the landslides and slips on the road.
Okay. No, it will be my pleasure. I just want to link up with Ian's earlier response in terms of the information that we use for our design. So the first one is the risk assessment is based on the specific site specific characteristics like your geology, your weather patterns, your flood potential, all of those things that may cause a risk. Then we overlay that with the criticality assessment, and the criticality assessment asks the basic question: if I know there's a risk on a piece of road, does it matter, or how much does it matter? And that really depends on the function of the road. What does it connect? So the priority for doing something will be a combination of the risk and the criticality. Then we step on to the next one where we start looking at what should my solution be. And I'll link in with another question. So in each one of these sections, whether we talk drainage, pavement design, or geotechnical design, we have come up with options of what do we do to, say, stabilize slopes, and how do we look at the slope stability issues in our design of the road. I cannot agree more with the comment from Indra that there's quite a difference between a overslip and an underslip on the road. And obviously, we take account of that when we look at the vulnerability or the fragility of that piece of road in terms of what we are prepared to spend in terms of our adaptation options. That also highlights another point, that there's never one solution for a problem area that we define. There's always more than one solution, and I do encourage in the manual for the designers to look at multiple options, and sometimes it's not one or the other. It's maybe a little bit of a combination of a little bit of that and a little bit of that. So I hope that addressed the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response. So maybe I will add one more question. So combining two different questions from the audience. So actually the question is more about the circular economy sustainability, because there are some of the bioengineering like things that for the slope stability, these kind of circular economy and sustainability measures are being considered. And also there is a question from Hatta about the incorporating decarbonization, pollution reduction, water and land management, disaster preparedness, and sustainable materials for the construction as well. So
That's right.
Could you provide your answers to how we consider these kind of sustainability and circular economy issues in our life?
Yes, so absolutely, that is something that's in our guideline, but also got to manage the expectations that those aspects are so deep in the knowledge base there that it may take a whole guideline by itself. So in that respect, we do cover the fundamental principles behind the sustainability aspects. We also, in our sections where we talk about decisions that you make, indicate in some cases which options may have a lower embodied carbon associated with it, or induced carbon. So yes, those aspects are in the manual, but at the same time, remember this is a design guideline. For that sort of analysis and input, you need an expert in that area. But very good question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have still many questions remaining, and I would like to invite Tian and Ian if you can respond to the questions into the Q&A box. Given the time constraints, I would like to move to the next part. So before closing this webinar, this is my great honor to invite Mr. Benjamin Panga, First Assistant Secretary Design Services of the Department of Works and Highways of Papua New Guinea, to give the closing remarks. Mr. Panga has extensive experience in leading road design and has played the central role of these climate and disaster resilient road manual works from the beginning, providing valuable guidance and insights. Mr. Panga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, June. I was having trouble to connect until I got it, but yeah, I think I've set to 90% of the Zoom, so it's all right. First of all, I just want to thank my secretary for the leadership to ensure this is happening. And am I on speaker? I'm all right? I listen? Okay,
Yes,
good.
we can hear you clearly.
Secondly, I want to thank your team, June, ADB team, come up with these very comprehensive manuals. I'll be very brief. I read the two manuals over and over. In my opinion, I understand the manuals. I'm so grateful for the manuals. Design is very holistic and comprehensive indeed. Manuals, maintenance is more of a performance-based oriented. It's quite different from what we have at the moment. And these two manuals really guide us in making decisions. We don't make final decision until we know it's the right decision to make. So these two manuals, that's what they are doing to us. So thank you very much for that. It's a different way of approach, and that's a way we should be going, considering a lot of effect, or all of the factors that affect the roads, including the climate change. So all in all, this manuals guide to make decisions at every level of governance down to the construction site. We still make decisions until you know where it's the right decision to make. I think that's the right approach. So you're making us thinking that way. That's the way the manual is making us to think. So I appreciate very much for these two very important manuals. So it's quite a timely also. 2 weeks ago, the department has launched a construction and contractors development conference where we're trying to upskill our contractors. These manuals are very much in line with the contractors must build themselves to implement, especially the maintenance. We must build a maintenance contractors, as Ian was emphasizing. It's very important, and I'm pretty sure this manual will drive this concept. Both manuals should drive this concept. So I don't have to go into details here. In my opinion, I understand this manual very well. I understand it, I appreciate it, and I accept it. And I'm looking forward to implement this manual as soon as possible. So thank you very much, team. And then on behalf of the secretary, I will appreciate and I want to thank the team. And I think we are heading into a very right direction as far as Papua New Guinea is concerned. Connect PNG programs are coming up. We have challenging topography, climate, politics, so many things happening. So I hope this manual will strengthen the DOW to stand firm, not to shake with the political decisions. So we'll stand on these two manuals and perform what we need to do as far as the road infrastructure development is concerned. Thank you very much, June, Ian, and Dion. I very much appreciated this.
Thank you.
This,
Thank you
Thank you,
very
and
much.
thank you to you. I was going to
Thank you
say
very
thank you
much,
to you.
Mr. Panga,
Sorry.
for your kind remarks and continuous strong support for this work. We are very much looking forward to continuing our collaboration on this very timely topic. And thank you very much for Ian and Etienne for your wonderful presentations as well. So I just want to have two things I would like to share with the audience. If this discussion you found it interesting, we'd love to see you on 18th to 22nd May at the Asia and the Pacific Transport Forum 2026, ADB's flagship transport sector forum. So you can see the QR codes. Please do the registration. So it will be also, there will be also a session on the green roads alongside other priority areas. And also, I would like to remind you that we are welcoming the evaluation survey from the participants. So it will be very much appreciated. We have left a link and guide on the chat. So please leave your evaluation. It will be very much helpful for us to develop further the Green Roads webinars. Again, thank you very much for participating in this webinar, and thank you very much for your valuable comments and questions.
Thank you, June and the team.
Thank you all, and thanks, Jinsun, for leading us through. And regards to the Secretary and team in PNG.